Howdy folks, my name is Robert Beta, and today I'll be providing a quick introduction to complex numbers. Now sometimes these are called imaginary numbers, but I'm not a huge fan of that name just because they're not really a whole lot more imaginary than the so-called real numbers that we're all very familiar with. The basic concept with complex numbers is to define this object I that when multiplied by itself, we say by definition that we get the real number -1. Now this isn't a real number because we know that whenever we multiply a real number by itself, we're going to get another real number that is greater than or equal to 0. So this is an object outside of the real numbers. And what that means is that when we add real multiples of I to other real numbers, we can generate all sorts of different what are called complex numbers that are these sums of real and so-called imaginary components. Now what this means is that the complex numbers behave a lot like a two-dimensional xy plane, where instead of an x-axis we have a real axis, and instead of a y-axis we have an imaginary axis. So you can think of a complex number simply as the real part plus I times the imaginary part, or as characterized by a distance and an angle relative to the positive real axis. And of course, just like with the typical two-dimensional plane, you can convert between the angle representation and the xy or real imaginary representation using the sine and cosine ratios.